On today's show, did the Cavs actually offer Darius Garland for Kevin Durant? I'll tell you what I've heard about that situation, and we will dive into the three things that the Cavs need to do to win the Eastern Conference next year. That's all straight ahead on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Make sure you drop us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review, and of course, be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $150 in bonus bets when that first $5 bet wins. On Sunday, Kevin Durant was traded from the Phoenix Suns to the Houston Rockets. In ESPN's reporting, the Cleveland Cavaliers were listed as a wild card team for Kevin Durant. I talked about that on yesterday's show and as far as just what I think that means for how the Cavs may proceed this offseason. I really don't think much has changed from my thoughts on yesterday's episode, but there was some additional conversation that came out on Monday. This was by Kevin O'Connor over at Yahoo on his podcast, talking about the Cavs as a, quote, I guess, dark horse contender, wild card contender, whatever terminology you want to use. I think it's all the same thing. But he brought up the name Darius Garland as somebody that was offered for Kevin Durant. And what I know about the situation is that, yes, the Cavs called the Phoenix Suns about Kevin Durant. They inquired. They checked in. I think that has kind of been Kobe Altman's line of thinking throughout his tenure as the lead decision maker, despite the fact his job title has changed, but lead decision maker. Like, I don't think that they acquired Jared Allen when they did without checking in, making the phone call. I don't think that they acquire Lauri Markkanen without checking in, making the phone call. I don't think they acquired Donovan Mitchell when they did without checking in, making the phone call to the Utah Jazz, because in none of those situations were the Cavs listed as some preferred destination or even an expected destination. The Cavs have sort of made these moves, maybe sort of in silence, I think is maybe a good way to say it. That said, what was discussed, we don't know exactly between Phoenix and Cleveland. Don't know what those conversations exactly were, but I do know that Darius Garland's name brought up. Like, that is something to make a Kevin Durant trade happen. Darius Garland needed to be part of that. Like, I think a lot of common sense tells you that if the Cavs were going to trade for Kevin Durant, Darius Garland needed to be part of the package going back to Phoenix. Isaac Okoro's name also, I believe, was brought up in these conversations. I think the word offer is probably a little bit much here, though. I think these things were discussed. I don't think that there was ever a formal offer from the Cavs to the Phoenix Suns, because I will say, if, and again, I do not believe this to be the case. I think the Cavs checked in. I think that any deal for Kevin Durant for the Cavs to make would have been extremely complicated and probably not worth it. Because when you look at the framework of what would have needed to be done, the Cavs would have needed to trade Darius Garland and Isaac Okoro to Phoenix, and then they probably would have needed to trade Jared Allen somewhere else to a third team and not take anything back. So it basically would have had to be, from a Cavs perspective, Garland, Okoro, and Allen for Kevin Durant, because then by aggregating salaries as a second apron team, the Cavs then would have been hard capped at the second apron. They would have needed to get out of the second apron, meaning they have to shave off so much money from their current cap sheet to do so. And then once that's done, they still have to fill out the rest of the roster. It's not as if they could just use veteran exceptions to get around that hard cap. That hard cap was a very firm number. So they really would have needed to shave, I believe, around $20 million off of their current cap sheet to make this work. And even then, you are just sapping the depth of this team. So I don't I think that you need to consider that when having this conversation. This was not something, to my knowledge, that got very far along. I do not think there was a firm offer from the Cavs. If there was a firm offer from the Cavs, then the Suns made a huge mistake by not trading for Darius Garland. Like, he is far and away a better player than Jalen Green, which was the best player Phoenix got back. Certainly a better player than Dylan Brooks, and you have no idea what the number 10 pick in the draft is going to be this year. But that certainly is something that if you are the Suns, like, yes, you would absolutely do that trade. But I don't think it was a trade that was ever actually available. I think it was something that was discussed because the Cavs are going to be a team that is going to make the call. That is what this front office does. That is how I think all front offices should operate. I think if you are a team that didn't make the call to Phoenix, you probably missed out on something. Not to say that you would have traded for Kevin Durant, because I ultimately think he had a big hand in getting to where he wanted to go with Houston. But I do not think that there was some deal between the Cavs and Suns that was close. Again, I think Darius Garland was discussed. I don't think Darius Garland was actually offered, because I don't think that while these two teams, yes, discussed framework for a possible deal, I don't think there was ever an offer that was made. I think the Cavs called, checked in, and I think they knew going into it that any deal they were to make would have been extremely complicated and truthfully probably not worth it for a 37-year-old Kevin Durant. We're not talking about trading for Kevin Durant in his prime, and you also have to factor in, well, he would also have to sign a contract extension, which I don't know if he would have had interest in doing in Cleveland, because I don't think things got very far between these two teams. Again, the Cavs should have made the call. Cavs did the right thing by making the call. I don't think that this was a wise move for them to make, but I think it's good that they made the call, and I don't think that they actually offered Darius Garland. Again, it was discussed. I do not believe that if it was offered. And the last thing that I will say on this too is I would be considering the rivalry between these two owners. I think it is relatively well documented. I mean, I'm not breaking news here that Dan Gilbert and Matt Ishbia, the owner of the Cavs and the owner of the Suns, don't exactly see eye to eye on a lot of things. They are business rivals. They are both from the state of Michigan. They both made their wealth in the mortgage industry. And I think it's been pretty well documented that they don't get along. They are rivals. I would be stunned, not to say that anything is impossible, because basketball is basketball and basketball is business, and business is business too on another end. But I would be very surprised if the Suns and Cavs made trades with each other. I just don't think that those two franchises are going to be in the deal-making business. I don't. So I think a lot of this, while I think it's a good thing the Cavs made the call. I think that it says that this front office for the Cavs knows that now is the time. And of course, this was all done far in advance of Tyrese Halliburton tearing his Achilles and the Eastern Conference looking the way that it does. But this says the Cavs are not going to, I don't know that the Cavs are going to make moves this offseason. I don't know that they're going to look much different than they did last season. I think that there will be some moves made. I don't know that there are going to be big moves made. I would be very surprised if there are any blockbuster moves made. I have said from the start, I don't think Darius Garland gets traded this summer. I still feel that Darius Garland is not going to be traded this summer. I would be very surprised if he is not in Cleveland next season when basketball is being played again. But if he's going to get traded, I don't think it's going to be to the Suns. And if that deal was on the table, I find it hard to believe that that's not what the Suns would have picked. I find it very hard to believe that if Darius Garland was offered to the Phoenix Suns, that the Suns would have selected what the Houston Rockets offered them instead. I cannot buy that, because again, I don't think this package was actually on the table, but the theoretical package of Darius Garland and Isaac Okoro, who is admittedly not a great basketball player. He's, I think, a solid regular season player. He's not a playoff player. But Darius Garland is far and away better than Jalen Green, than Dylan Brooks, than anything the Suns got in return. I do think, too, Darius Garland would be a really good fit alongside Devin Booker. So I think that's a deal the Suns would have said yes to. I just don't think it was a deal that was actually on the table from what I've been told. So I think that this is also a little bit being taken out of context. Like the word offer that KOC used, I think was thrown around a little bit, and that's fine. Like it was discussed, but I don't think there was a firm offer on the table, because I do think if there was a firm offer on the table, Kevin Durant would be a Cav and Darius Garland would be a member of the Suns. Like I just think that for the Suns, it would not make sense for them to pass up on that offer if it was actually one that was available. Was it discussed? Yes, it was. But I don't think it was a real firm offer on the table. I think it was far too complicated. Again, the Cavs called. They checked in because that's what the Cavs are going to do. The next time a star becomes available, you know what the Cavs are probably going to do? They're going to make the phone call. They're going to check in. They're going to see what's going on. They're probably not going to land said star, but they're going to make the phone call because that's how this Cavs front office operates. They're going to try and get better this summer. It doesn't mean that they're going to make changes, because there might not be changes that they feel are realistic that they can make that make them better, but it's not going to be for a lack of trying. And I think that is one other thing that I keep coming back to with this. It's like Kobe Altman, his staff, they're going to make the phone call. That's how they built this team. They didn't build this team because Donovan Mitchell wanted to be in Cleveland, or they didn't build this team because Jared Allen wanted to be in Cleveland, or Lauri Markkanen so many years ago wanted to be in Cleveland, which of course got Donovan Mitchell here. They built this team by making the call, by operating sort of in silence in these things. They're not a team that is often talked about in trade conversation. They move in silence. That's how they run things. But calling the Suns makes sense. It does. But I don't know that offering Darius Garland for Kevin Durant and doing everything else that would have needed to be done, because it's not just trading Darius Garland. It would have been Isaac Okoro. It would have been Jared Allen. It would have been a lot of stuff for a 37-year-old Kevin Durant. I don't know that that makes the most sense. That's why I don't think it was actually a real firm offer that the Suns could have said, yes, call that into the NBA. We're going to make this deal right now. I don't think that was a thing, but I think they wanted to check in because that is how the Cavs operate, and that is what makes sense. Now, I talked yesterday on the show about the state of the Eastern Conference and how now is the Cavs' time in the East. Well, I've got 3 things that Cleveland needs to do next year in the Eastern Conference to win the Eastern Conference. That's next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it can be easy to lose track of all that cash. Well, that's where Monarch Money comes in, because they'll be your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center where you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending right in one place. You can stop just managing your money and you can start building your wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, even plan for some of those long-term goals that I know you have. Plus, managing your money with your partner smoother than ever, because you can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA, that is LOCKEDONNBA, at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Again, that's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Today's show also brought to you by OpenPhone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had a need that you needed handled urgently. Maybe a plumber or some other sort of service provider. If you had an issue popped up, you called somebody, they didn't answer. You probably didn't wait for them to call you back. You might have left a message, but as soon as you were done leaving that message, you know what you did? You found the next number and you called that one because you needed your needs taken care of right away. That's why you need OpenPhone, because OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. OpenPhone lets you manage business calls and text from a single app, and the shared inbox feature is a game changer because your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat. And right now, OpenPhone offering my listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customer. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. If you're watching on YouTube too, hit that thumbs up button for me. And the Cavs are the favorites to win the Eastern Conference. Odds were released following Game 7 of the Finals on Sunday. Cavs have the second best odds on FanDuel to win the NBA championship. Of course, only behind the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are pretty heavy favorites to repeat as winners. But the Cavs also have the best odds in the Eastern Conference. They are ahead of the likes of the New York Knicks, the Orlando Magic, the Boston Celtics, so on and so forth. The Cavs are listed on FanDuel at plus 270 to win the conference. And if it's not now, it's never for the Cavs. And I went into this, I think, in pretty good detail on Monday's edition of the show. But I did want to talk about a few things that I think need to happen next season for the Cavs, not only to win the Eastern Conference, but also to kind of win the NBA title. I don't know, the thing that is the main goal for the team, because I don't think just at this point, it would be hard for me to say if they win the East next year and they get to the finals, like that's a success. But I also think that they're going to be wanting more. And the thing that I keep coming back to, because I don't know that the Cavs are going to be able to go out and make a big splash in terms of some team altering trade. I think that the Cavs are going to get better next year, even if they don't make a trade. Like if they run back the same exact roster, I think that they will be a better team next year than they were this past year. And the reason why I feel that is because of Evan Mobley. He is the guy that I look at and say, okay, if the Cavs do this, they'll win the East. Or if the Cavs do this, they'll win the NBA title. The thing that I keep coming back to is, well, what about Evan Mobley's development? Because it's undeniable that he took a leap going from last season, year 3, to this past season that just finished year 4. He was a much different player certainly on offense. Defensively, he was great, and he's been great essentially for his entire career. So I don't know that there was that much growth on that end, but he went from a guy that had never made an all-star team to a guy that was second team All-NBA, to a guy that received an MVP vote. And I think there's much more there for Evan Mobley. I don't think that he is somebody that is done getting better, that is done improving as a basketball player. I don't think that. So, and I wrote this for my Substack, The Inside Shot, and you can find this if you're listening to this before 8 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday. It's not out yet. If you're watching or listening to this after 8 o'clock on Tuesday, I went into pretty great detail in a way that I don't necessarily think I can kind of get into on this podcast, just because there's a lot of numbers and I don't want to read numbers off. But the way that I look at this is, I was in Milwaukee. I was living in Madison. I covered the Milwaukee Bucks loosely when Giannis was up and coming. So I was there covering the Milwaukee Bucks, amongst other things. That wasn't my main job. My main job was covering Wisconsin Badger football and basketball. But I was around the Bucks enough during LeBron's last season in Cleveland. So the 2017-2018 season. And that season for Giannis was a step forward. He went from a guy that the year before had not been what he turned into. And I think that was kind of the first time that people started to look at him and say, somebody, oh, that guy can be the best player in a title winning team. That guy can be truly an MVP. The year before that, he was sort of where Evan was. He received MVP votes for the first time. He was named, that was the first time he was named all defense. He was second team all defense. He was named second team all NBA. He was the most improved player. And I don't think Evan necessarily qualified for that, because I think Evan has been really good the entire time in a way that Giannis really wasn't his first 3 years. Like, he took a pretty sizable step from year 3 to year 4, in the same way that I think Evan Mobley took a pretty sizable step from year 3 to year 4. And then from year 4 to year 5, Giannis took another step forward. And I think Evan and Giannis are different basketball players, obviously. I don't think they have the same exact skill set, but I do think that there are enough similarities that it is worth talking about what Giannis looked like at that point in his career and what Evan Mobley should look like this upcoming season. And one of the things that I keep coming back to, and I don't know that the numbers are going to look the same, and part of it is what is surrounding each player, because you go back to those Milwaukee Bucks teams that were not very good. Giannis was the best player on those teams, and he was surrounded by the likes of Chris Middleton, who's a very good player. Malcolm Brogdon struggled to stay healthy. Eric Bledsoe was on that Milwaukee Bucks team. John Henson, Cavs legend. Jabari Parker, who could never stay healthy. Matthew Dellavedova, of course, another Cavs legend. Like, those guys were on that team. But that Bucks team just pales in comparison to what the Cavs were this past season, what the Cavs are going to be this upcoming season in terms of talent. Like, those teams were not championship contenders, and Giannis had to carry a much heavier load than what Evan Mobley has to carry right now. But I do think that you can look at that and say, okay, well, what if Evan Mobley goes from the guy who I think was very clearly the second best player on the Cavs this year? I think it's fair to say Donovan Mitchell, who was first team All-NBA, was the best player on the Cavs. But the thing that I keep coming back to, as if you gave me, and I'm going to talk about at least one more thing next segment about this, like what the Cavs need to do. But if there's a fill in the blank, and you say to me, if blank happens, the Cavs win the Eastern Conference next year, or if blank happens, the Cavs win the title next year. The answer to that question for me is Evan Mobley's the best player in Cleveland, because Donovan Mitchell's still going to be great. Like, he's not going anywhere. He's not getting worse. I think Donovan Mitchell still probably has a little bit more he can get to. I don't know if I think he's obviously much closer to his peak than Evan Mobley is to his. But I think there's a very real world in which we are talking about Evan Mobley 1 year from now as the best player on the Cavs. That doesn't mean Donovan Mitchell's still not great. It means Evan Mobley took another step forward. If we are having that conversation, then we are talking about the Cavs as at least having won the Eastern Conference, provided they stay healthy, which is a big if in today's NBA, because I think getting through the playoffs is much easier said than done in terms of health. The Oklahoma City Thunder won the title because they were the best team, but also because they were the healthiest team. If you go back and look at the four teams that were in the conference finals, both in the West and the East, what did they all have in common? They played an injured team in the second round. The Thunder played a Denver Nuggets team that Aaron Gordon was not right. The Wolves played a Golden State team that did not have Steph Curry. The Pacers beat the Cavs, who didn't have Darius Garland for part of the series, Evan Mobley for part of the series, DeAndre Hunter for part of the series. The Knicks beat the Boston Celtics, who Jaylen Brown needed knee surgery after the season. Jason Tatum tore his Achilles in Game 4. They all caught breaks, and that's going to happen. But other than that, because I think that's a little bit of a cop-out to just say, oh, the Cavs stay healthy, they win the East. Like, they should. But the thing that I keep thinking is, well, if Evan Mobley 12 months from now is the best player on the Cavs are going to win the East. If Evan Mobley is the best player on the Cavs 12 months from now, the Cavs have a really good chance to win the championship. I do think that is the most important thing that can happen this offseason. It's not a trade Kobe Altman can make or a free agent signing or retaining Ty Jerome. Those things matter. And I'm going to talk about a couple of those. But the most important thing ultimately for the Cavs is that Evan Mobley takes another step forward in his game. I think it's possible. I think it's likely. How big that step is, well, I think that's going to decide an awful lot for the Cavs. Now, what's at least one other thing that needs to happen for the Cavs to win the East next season? I'll tell you what that is next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing. Whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, I certainly am, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You know, I was a week early on the golf. I was. For the big tournament that was a couple of weeks ago, I like the certain guy that's captain of the team event that's coming up in a couple of months. So what I do, I go on FanDuel, I bet him. And of course, it was okay, not great. And then the event that just took place this past week, I stayed away from it. Who wins? The guy that I thought was going to win the big tournament the week before. That's how it goes sometimes. It happened. It's unfortunate. but maybe you should just play the same guy 2 weeks in a row. That's what I wish I would have done, because I would have been a winner with FanDuel. And if you're already following that action, why not make it a little bit more thrilling? Because with FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. Sunburn, no fun. FanDuel, lots of fun. Also, if you're looking for futures, I've talked about them yesterday, talked about them a little bit today. They're out for basketball. NBA Finals, Oklahoma City Thunder, plus 220 to win the 2026 NBA Finals. The Cavs in second at plus 800. Then the New York Knicks and Houston Rockets both at plus 900. Orlando Magic plus 1,200. The Boston Celtics plus 1,300. A little sneaky there as far as the Eastern Conference goes. The Cavs plus 270. The New York Knicks plus 300. The Orlando Magic plus 430. And the Boston Celtics plus 460. Those are the four teams that I think have any sort of chance, but it is very curious. The Boston Celtics are there. Could that mean something is up their sleeves? I don't know. But if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. Thing number 2 that I think the Cavs need to do in order to win the East, they need to find toughness. And this is, I think there is a risk. There is inherent risk, both in terms of if the Cavs make a move, like there's a risk in terms of screwing up maybe a 64-win team. There's also a risk in keeping things together, because I think that we are at the point now with mental toughness where if guys on that roster, if it hasn't clicked after what happened against the Pacers, it might never click. So figuring out where that line is, I think, is one of the most important things that can happen all summer for the Cavs. And the biggest danger with that is you're not going to know until May, because I just went through the odds on FanDuel, right? And the Cavs are the favorites in the East, then the Knicks, then the Magic, then the Celtics, then Philly, then Indy, then Detroit, then Milwaukee, Miami, Toronto, Atlanta. Like, it goes really quickly from teams that you can believe in. I'm not a big believer in the Orlando Magic. I think if you listen to this podcast, you know that I think that they're a flawed team that still really needs a point guard. And I don't know that the New York Knicks are actually even believers in the New York Knicks, because I don't know that they would have fired Tom Thibodeau if they would have thought that they were championship contenders. But do I believe the Knicks are going to win a playoff series next year? Yeah, of course. Do I believe the Magic are going to win a playoff series next year? Probably. I still have a lot of doubts about them being able to score the basketball. Are the Boston Celtics going to win a playoff series? I don't know. I don't know what they're going to look like health-wise. I have no reason to believe in Philly. The Pacers are not going to have Tyrese Halliburton all year. The Detroit Pistons are a nice young team, but I'm not sure that they're ready to take another step. It gets dark really quickly in the East. So the Cavs are going to, like, feel pretty strong that the Cavs are at least going to be in the second round next year. And that's the next opportunity to find out about their mental toughness, to find out if they have it. And having that, going to the place where you have failed the last couple of years, and maybe calling the loss against the Celtics a failure is not appropriate, because they were never going to win that series. Like, I don't think they failed to meet expectations. They got beat by a team that was much better than them that went on to win the title. So I don't think that there's necessarily shame in that. But if they get back to the point where they haven't been able to get past, that's when you're going to see their mental toughness tested. And finding out before then, I think, is a really difficult thing to do. But ensuring that they have it some way, somehow, is a very important thing this summer. Building this roster in whatever moves Kobe Altman and the rest of his staff can make, building this roster in a way that adds mental toughness, I think, is something they need to do. And if they do it, I have no doubts about them winning the East. But if they don't, that's when I think things could go wrong. As of now, I'd pick the Cavs to win the East. I would. I don't believe in New York. I don't believe in Orlando. Everybody else is hurt. It's where we're at. The red carpet is rolled out for the Cavs. It is. And if they don't take advantage, it's going to feel like a failure that makes this postseason, where they came up short, look like nothing. Thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. If you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. I will be back tomorrow talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers and maybe even the NBA draft right here on Locked on Cavs.